Ethan never thought his life would bring him so far from Earth. He was just an engineer, someone who liked machines more than people, someone who preferred fixing broken circuits over joining long conversations. Yet now here he was, standing on the bridge of a massive alien starship that drifted among the stars. The ship belonged to the Aelirians, a tall and proud alien race. Their bodies were strong and elegant, their faces sharp like carved stone, and their silver armor reflected the lights of the stars. They moved with discipline, every step measured, every word controlled. Among them, Ethan felt small, clumsy, and very human. His role was simple. He was part of the human exchange program. Earth had only recently entered contact with the Aelirians, and the program was meant to build trust between species. While others, diplomats, scientists, and translators, worked on politics and culture, Ethan's job was more practical. He was good with machines, and the Aelirians valued that. Whenever their human-sized systems needed attention, they sent him. But there was one thing Ethan found harder to deal with than broken machines: Commander Lyra. She was the commanding officer of the bridge, a tall woman with dark violet skin and silver eyes that seemed to pierce through anyone who dared look too long. Her presence was sharp and cold like a blade. She did not laugh, did not waste words, and did not tolerate mistakes. Every crew member stood straighter when she entered the room, and even Ethan, who technically was not under her command, felt his knees lock whenever she walked near him. That morning, Ethan had been sent to repair a malfunctioning power conduit near the command chairs. The task should have been easy. He had his tools, his data pad, and a set of instructions from the ship's chief technician. But the problem was not the machine, it was the pressure. Ethan crouched by the conduit, pulling wires and adjusting circuits, while the entire bridge crew worked around him. Silver-armored officers passed by, their eyes flicking toward him but never lingering. Their steps echoed on the polished metal floor. The giant stars outside the viewing glass glowed, throwing cold blue light across the chamber. And then there was Lyra. She stood at the center of the bridge, issuing orders in her calm, controlled voice. Every word carried weight. Her posture was straight, her armor gleamed, and her sword rested at her side. A weapon humans were told she almost never used but always kept near. Ethan tried to focus on his work, but his nerves kept betraying him. His hand shook slightly as he tightened a coil. His heart thumped too loudly in his chest. He told himself not to look at her, not to think about her, not to notice the way she moved with such control, but his eyes betrayed him. And then disaster struck, not with the conduit, but with his own mouth. The translator device in his ear had a habit of activating when he spoke too close to his breath. Ethan muttered without thinking. Wow, she really has a perfect... He froze. His words had slipped out before he even knew what he was saying. His brain had thought it and his lips had let it out. He had meant it as a whisper to himself, just a careless private comment. But then he heard it, clear, sharp, and horrifying. The translator carried his words across the bridge in flawless Aelirian speech. The room went silent. Every officer stopped moving. The faint hum of the machines became the only sound. Ethan's throat went dry. His eyes widened. He slowly turned his head, praying, begging that maybe the device had failed. But no. Commander Lyra was staring at him. Her silver eyes were locked on his face, unreadable, cold, and unblinking. She did not speak. She did not frown. She simply looked at him. The rest of the crew shifted, some trying to hide smirks, others exchanging glances, their controlled discipline breaking for the first time Ethan had ever seen. Heat rushed into Ethan's cheeks. He wanted to crawl into the conduit and vanish. He wanted the ship to eject him into space. He wanted anything except to be standing there. Under her gaze, I didn't mean that wasn't, he stammered, his words tumbling uselessly from his lips. But the silence stretched. Lyra finally moved, her steps echoing on the floor as she approached. Each click of her boots against the metal sounded like a countdown to his doom. Ethan backed slightly, clutching his datapad against his chest like a shield. She stopped just a meter from him. From this close, she was taller than he remembered, her shadow falling over him. Her expression remained calm, but her eyes held something sharp, something unreadable. "You spoke without thought," she said at last, her voice steady. Ethan's heart nearly exploded. I'm sorry. I swear it was just a mistake. I didn't mean to. The crew was watching. No one dared interrupt. Ethan saw a few soldiers pressing their lips tightly together to keep from laughing. Lyra tilted her head slightly. You humans, your words slip like water. You do not control them. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Yes, sometimes we say things we don't mean. I'm sorry. Really sorry. I'll fix the conduit and leave right away. But she did not dismiss him. Instead, she studied him, her eyes narrowing as if examining a puzzle. Interesting, she murmured almost to herself. A human speaks what others would only think. Reckless, yet honest, Ethan blinked. He did not know whether she was about to punish him, laugh at him, or order him thrown out an airlock. Then, without warning, she turned back to her command chair. Continue your work, she said calmly. The crew returned to their stations, though Ethan caught more than a few sideways glances. Some officers whispered to each other, trying to hide their grins. The silence of the bridge had been broken, and for the first time Ethan realized something. Commander Lyra had not punished him. She had not shouted, not ordered his removal, not humiliated him in front of the others. She had simply let it pass. Ethan bent over his tools again, his mind spinning faster than any circuit he had ever fixed. Why had she reacted that way? Was she amused? Was she offended but hiding it? Or, an even scarier thought, was she waiting, planning some test or challenge? He finished the repair with shaking hands, then stood, avoiding everyone's eyes. As he walked toward the exit, he could feel the stairs on his back. When the door slid shut behind him, he leaned against the corridor wall and took the deepest breath of his life. That, he whispered to himself, was the stupidest thing I've ever done. But deep down, a thought gnawed at him. Commander Lyra had called his slip interesting. And that word coming from her was almost more frightening than anger. For Ethan, it was only the beginning. The next morning, Ethan tried to avoid the bridge. He worked on engine diagnostics, checked the cooling vents, and even volunteered to fix the hydroponic system, anything to keep him away from Commander Lyra and the memory of his slip. But he couldn't avoid her forever. Orders came through his datapad. Engineer Ethan, report to the bridge, immediate. The message carried her command code. His stomach sank. He considered pretending he hadn't seen it, but the Illyrians tracked everything. If he disobeyed, he would only make things worse. So he walked toward the bridge, each step heavy, as though the metal corridor itself wanted to slow him down. The doors slid open, and the bridge filled his vision again, towering officers, polished silver armor, the quiet hum of machines, and at the center stood Lyra, tall and commanding as always. Her eyes found him the moment he entered. Ethan swallowed hard and forced himself forward. He tried to keep his face calm, but he felt every eye on him. He expected a sharp order, maybe even a formal reprimand in front of the crew. Instead, Lyra said, "Human, step forward." He obeyed, standing a little too stiffly. "You spoke words yesterday," she continued, her voice calm but steady. "Careless words." Ethan opened his mouth to apologize again, but she lifted one hand, silencing him. "Your words were strange. But they revealed something. You humans speak without chains. You do not hide every thought. This interests me." The crew looked at each other, confused. A murmur passed through them, but Lyra ignored it. Ethan blinked. "Interests you?" "Commander, I didn't mean to disrespect." She cut him off. "Silence. You did not disrespect. You revealed. That is different." Her words were sharp, but they carried no anger. If anything, there was curiosity in her tone. Ethan couldn't believe it. The same words that could have destroyed him yesterday had somehow turned into something else. Lyra stepped closer, her silver eyes narrowing slightly. "Human, you will answer me honestly, always. You will not filter your words as we do. You will speak what you see, what you think, what you feel. Do you understand?" Ethan froze. His first instinct was to say no. If he kept talking without thinking, he'd only dig his grave deeper. But looking around the bridge, he realized this wasn't a request. This was an order. I understand, he said quietly. Lyra studied him for a long moment. Then she asked her first question. "What do you think of this ship?" Ethan blinked. "This ship, it's huge, strong. Honestly, it feels like a floating fortress. But," he hesitated, "but what?" Lyra pressed. Ethan took a breath. "But it also feels cold. Too perfect. Too clean. Like everything here is made for order, not for people. It's impressive, but not welcoming." The crew shifted uncomfortably, clearly not used to such bluntness. But Lyra's expression didn't change. If anything, her eyes sharpened. "Interesting," she said again. "Next, what do you think of us, my crew?" Ethan's throat went dry. He glanced around at the officers who stared back at him with raised brows. Speaking honestly here could end very badly. But Lyra's gaze demanded an answer. "You're disciplined, strong, smarter than me, definitely." But he hesitated again. "You all look like you're carrying heavy weights. Like you're afraid to laugh or relax. Like you're made of steel outside, but maybe a little lonely inside." The silence that followed was heavy. Some crew members frowned. Others looked away, unsure how to react. Ethan's heart raced. He was sure he'd gone too far. But Lyra spoke again, her tone as calm as ever. "You see truth others avoid. That is rare." Ethan blinked in disbelief. She wasn't angry. She was approving, and then came the question he least expected. "What do you think of me?" His chest tightened. The memory of yesterday's slip crashed into his mind. He almost choked on his words. "You?" "Yes, speak." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck nervously. Every instinct screamed at him to be careful, to say something safe. But she had ordered honesty, and strangely he sensed she would know if he lied. "You're terrifying," he admitted. "You walk into a room and everyone freezes. You're strong, sharp like a blade that could cut through anyone. But—" He hesitated, forcing himself to continue. "But I think there's more. You're not just cold. You're hiding something. Maybe softer, maybe kinder. I don't know. But it's there." The bridge fell silent again. Ethan's heart pounded so hard he thought it would break through his chest. Lyra stared at him, her silver eyes unreadable. Then slowly, very slowly, a faint smile touched the corner of her lips. It was the first time Ethan, or perhaps anyone, had ever seen her smile. The crew gasped quietly, their discipline breaking once more. No one dared comment, but Ethan saw shock in their faces. Commander Lyra never smiled. "Ever." "You may go," she said finally. Ethan blinked. "Go, that's it?" "For now," she replied. "You have given me enough for today." He turned quickly, almost stumbling toward the exit. But before the door closed, he heard her voice once more. "Human," she said. He stopped, looking back nervously. Her silver eyes locked onto his. "Do not fear your honesty. Fear silence, for silence builds walls higher than war." The door shut, leaving Ethan in the corridor, his mind spinning. He had expected punishment. Instead, she had given him something else. A role, a strange kind of trust. She wanted him to be honest. Always. As he walked back toward his quarters, Ethan's heart raced not from fear but from confusion. Why would a commander as strict as Lyra care about a human's unfiltered thoughts? What did she hope to gain? He didn't know yet. But deep inside, he sensed that his accidental slip had started something far bigger than he understood. And the way she had smiled at him, it haunted his thoughts long after he left the bridge. Ethan lay awake in his quarters, staring at the ceiling. The stars outside the window glowed faintly, but his mind was louder than any light. He couldn't stop replaying yesterday in his head, the way Commander Lyra had asked him questions, the way she had demanded honesty, and most of all, the way she had smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't soft or playful like human smiles, but it was real, and it had shaken him more than any shout could have. Why had she chosen him? Why his words? He was just an engineer, not a diplomat or a trained speaker. He fixed machines, not people. Yet somehow his clumsy honesty had caught her attention. The next day, orders came again. "Engineer Ethan, report to the training hall." The training hall? Ethan frowned. Why there? He was no fighter. He didn't even know how to hold one of their long blades, let alone use it. But the order carried Lyra's code, and there was no choice. When he arrived, the hall stretched out like a battlefield. The floor gleamed, marked with white lines. Tall racks of weapons lined the walls, swords, staffs, and training gear. Alien soldiers sparred with perfect discipline, their movements sharp and efficient. And there at the center stood Commander Lyra. She wore lighter armor than usual, but even so, she looked imposing. The soldiers stopped sparring when Ethan entered, their eyes turning toward him with curiosity. "You came," Lyra said simply. "I didn't think I had a choice," Ethan replied carefully. Lyra stepped forward, her silver eyes locking onto him. "You are correct." She gestured toward the open floor. "You will join me. Ethan blinked. Join you in sparring? No, Lyra said. In truth. He frowned, not understanding. She explained. My people train our bodies every day. We sharpen our skills, control our strength, master our words. But you humans speak without control. That is your way. I wish to test it further. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck nervously. My honesty? Yes, while we train. And before he could answer, she tossed him a practice staff. It was light, but still long enough that he had to grip it with both hands. Ethan looked down at the weapon. I think this is a bad idea. Lyra's lips curved faintly. Good, speak as you think. Now defend yourself. She moved faster than his eyes could follow. Her staff swung, and Ethan barely raised his own in time to block. The impact jolted through his arms, and he stumbled back. Too slow, Lyra said calmly. What do you think of my attack? Ethan panted. Terrifying. Like being hit by a falling tree. Lyra's eyes gleamed. Good, again! She struck, and again Ethan blocked clumsily, nearly losing his grip. The soldiers around the hall had stopped sparring entirely. They were watching, murmuring to each other, clearly confused about why their commander was sparring with a human engineer. Lyra pressed harder. Each strike came faster, sharper. Ethan barely kept up, his arms aching. And all the while she kept asking questions. What do you see in our fighting style? Ethan gasped between blocks. Precise. Efficient, but maybe too rigid. You all fight like machines. Strong, yes, but predictable, the soldiers muttered, offended by his words. But Lyra only nodded slightly. Interesting. Again. The next strike nearly knocked him over. He stumbled, barely regaining his footing. His chest burned with effort. Lyra asked again, What do you think of me now? Ethan's thoughts spilled out with his breath. You're brutal. Stronger than anyone I've ever seen. But you're also holding back. You're testing me, not trying to break me. For the first time, Lyra's strikes slowed. She studied him, silver eyes narrowing. Correct, the soldiers gasped quietly. Their commander never admitted weakness, never confirmed an opponent's words. But here she had, to a human no less. Lyra lowered her staff. You see more than most. You see what lies beneath. Ethan leaned on his staff, panting. Or maybe I'm just guessing and lucky. Her lips curved faintly again. Perhaps, or perhaps not. The session continued for an hour. Lyra sparred and Ethan survived barely. Every mistake, every weakness, she made him speak aloud. And every observation he gave, no matter how awkward or clumsy, she accepted. By the end, Ethan's arms shook with exhaustion. Sweat dripped down his forehead and his lungs burned. But Lyra looked almost untouched, calm and composed. You did well, she said finally. Ethan laughed weakly. If by well you mean I didn't die, then sure. The soldiers whispered again, clearly surprised at his casual tone. But Lyra didn't punish him. Instead, she dismissed the others and gestured for Ethan to walk with her. They moved into a quiet corridor. The hum of the ship surrounded them. For a while, neither spoke. Then Lyra asked, Why do you humans value honesty so much? Ethan blinked. Do we? I don't think we're always honest. A lot of humans lie. Yes, she said. But when you are honest, it is... Raw de pure cuts deeper than any blade. Why? Ethan thought for a moment. Maybe because we're fragile. We don't have your strength or your armor or your discipline. But we do have words. When we're honest, it connects us. It makes us stronger together. Even if it hurts. Lyra was silent, walking beside him. Then she said quietly, My people fear such words. We fear what lies beneath them. We fear what we might reveal if we stop controlling ourselves. Ethan looked at her, surprised. For the first time, she sounded vulnerable. Not weak, but human in a way he hadn't expected. You don't have to fear honesty, he said softly. It doesn't make you weaker. It makes you real. Her eyes flicked toward him, sharp again. But this time the sharpness wasn't anger. It was thought. She was studying him, measuring his words as if they were weapons she had never seen before. Finally, she said, Perhaps. We will see. As they reached the end of the corridor, Ethan realized something strange. He wasn't just some human engineer anymore. Lyra was using him, his honesty, his impulsive words, as a tool. Maybe even as a weapon. But deep down he wondered if there was more. Maybe she wasn't just testing him. Maybe she was testing herself. And for the first time, Ethan felt something shift between them. Not just duty, not just command, but something unspoken. something that scared him more than any sparring match ever could. The next few days were strange for Ethan. Wherever he went on the starship, the alien soldiers watched him differently. Before, he had been just the small human engineer, easy to overlook. Now, whispers followed him down the halls. Some soldiers looked at him with respect, others with amusement, and some with suspicion. It all started after his training sessions with Commander Lyra. She had pushed him harder than he thought possible, but she had also listened to his words. Every observation he made, no matter how blunt, she had treated like something valuable. The crew could hardly believe it. Their cold, controlled commander was giving attention to a human's unfiltered thoughts. One evening, as Ethan tried to enjoy a simple meal in the mess hall, a group of younger Illyrian officers approached him. They towered over him, their armor shining even off duty. One leaned down, his silver eyes sharp. "Human," he said. "Why does the commander ask you for your words? What power do they hold?" Ethan nearly choked on his food. He wiped his mouth and shrugged. "Honestly, I don't know. I think she just likes hearing things that aren't rehearsed." The officers frowned, confused. For them, every word spoken on duty was chosen carefully, polished like steel. To imagine words slipping out without control was almost insulting. One officer muttered, "Reckless." Another said, "Or dangerous." Before Ethan could reply, the hall doors opened. Silence fell as Commander Lyra entered, her steps echoing. The officers immediately stood straighter, their questions vanishing into their throats. Lyra's eyes found Ethan, and she gestured for him to follow. He sighed, pushing his tray aside. His stomach was still half empty, but something told him food wasn't going to matter compared to whatever she wanted now. They walked together through the corridors until they reached a chamber Ethan had never entered before. The doors slid open, revealing a massive room with high pillars and glowing banners of silver and blue. At the far end sat a long table where senior officers and council members waited. Ethan's heart sank. This wasn't just another test. This was something far more serious. "What is this place?" he whispered. Lyra answered simply, "The council chamber. Today you will speak before them." Ethan nearly tripped over his own feet. "Speak? Before them? Why me? I'm just an engineer." Lyra stopped and looked at him, her silver eyes steady. "Because you speak without chains. Because they must hear what we cannot say ourselves. You will not fight with blades today. You will fight with truth." Ethan's stomach twisted. He wanted to protest, to run, to tell her this was madness. But the council was already watching. Backing out now wasn't an option. They entered the chamber together. The alien leaders studied him, their faces unreadable. Lyra stood tall beside him, her hand resting on her sword hilt, but she did not speak. Instead, she nodded toward Ethan. "Human," one elder said, his voice deep and commanding. "You are brought here because Commander Lyra claims your words have value. We will decide if this is true. Speak." Ethan's throat went dry. His mind raced. What could he say that wouldn't insult them but also wouldn't be false? He remembered Lyra's words. Do not fear honesty. Fear silence. So he took a deep breath and began. "Your ship," he said, his voice shaky at first, "is the most powerful thing I've ever seen. It could crush any human vessel without effort. You are strong, disciplined, and united." But the word echoed through the chamber. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. "But it also feels like a prison," Ethan continued. "Everything is perfect. Too perfect. Every step, every word, every look, it's all controlled. You don't laugh. You don't relax. You don't show what you really feel. It's like you're afraid of your own hearts." The chamber grew tense. Some elders narrowed their eyes. Others whispered. Ethan's palms grew sweaty, but he pushed on. "In my world, we're messy. Humans make mistakes all the time. We speak before we think. We laugh when we shouldn't. We fight and forgive and sometimes even cry. We're fragile compared to you, but we're alive. And sometimes being alive means letting people see the truth inside, not just the mask you wear." The silence that followed was heavier than steel. Ethan's chest pounded as he waited for someone to shout, to dismiss him, to order him dragged out. But Lyra spoke first. "This is why I brought him here. He speaks what we cannot. His words may sting, but they are not false. They are human, and they are needed." The council turned their eyes to her. One elder said coldly, "You risk much by letting a human speak so freely. You lower our dignity." Lyra's voice sharpened. "No, I raise it. Dignity without truth is nothing but glass. Strong until it breaks, the room erupted in low arguments. Some elders agreed, others protested. Ethan stood frozen, unable to believe what was happening. He had expected to be punished, not defended. Finally, the eldest of the council raised his hand. Silence fell again. His silver eyes studied Ethan for a long time. "Human," the elder said slowly, "if we allow this, if we let your kind speak without chains, what will it bring us?" Ethan swallowed hard. He thought about Earth, about the messy, chaotic, loud life of humans. Then he looked at the Illyrians, tall and perfect but distant and cold. "It will bring you connection," he said. "It will remind you that strength isn't just silence and discipline. Sometimes strength is showing weakness. Sometimes strength is letting someone see the real you." The elder leaned back, his face unreadable. For a long moment no one spoke. Then he nodded once. "Perhaps. There is wisdom here," the council murmured in surprise. Lyra's eyes glimmered faintly, though her face remained calm. The session ended without punishment. Ethan walked out beside Lyra, his legs weak, his heart still racing. In the quiet corridor outside, he finally spoke. "I thought I was done for in there." Lyra glanced at him. "You spoke truth. That is never failure." Ethan let out a shaky laugh. "You know, back on Earth, people usually get in trouble for being too honest." Lyra's lips curved into that faint smile again, the one that made the crew whisper in shock. "Then perhaps your world is wiser than it knows. Honesty may wound, but it also frees." They walked in silence for a moment, the hum of the ship surrounding them. Then Lyra added softly, "You have done more today than you realize. The council will not forget your words." "Neither will I." Ethan blinked at her. Something in her tone was different. Not just commanding, not just testing. It was almost personal, and that thought unsettled him more than any council chamber ever could. The arena lights dimmed, and the sound of thousands of alien voices echoed through the great chamber. Ethan stood in the center beside Commander Lyra, his heart beating faster than any battle drum. He could feel the weight of alien eyes on him, studying every detail of his small human frame. He thought he would be crushed by their silent judgment, but Lyra stood tall next to him like a shield, her presence calming him in ways he could not explain. The council sat above the arena on tall golden thrones, their faces hard and unreadable. They had listened to Lyra's argument, that human honesty, even when reckless, had value. Now it was time for Ethan to prove it himself. He was not given a weapon, only his voice. That alone was enough to make him nervous. He had faced machines, storms, and danger before, but now the challenge was his own words. "Human," one of the counselors spoke, his voice deep and stern. "You claim your kind brings something rare. You claim your thoughts can change even the strongest warrior. Speak now. What do you see before you?" Ethan swallowed hard. His first thought was fear, but then he remembered Lyra's words. "Do not hold back. Speak as humans do." He took a deep breath. "I see pride," Ethan said, looking at the council. "I see a people who are strong but also lonely. Your traditions are sharp like blades. They protect you, but they also cut you. You stand tall, but you do not bend. And because of that, you may break." A ripple moved through the arena. Many aliens gasped. No one had ever spoken to the council like that. But Ethan did not stop. "I see soldiers who never laugh. I see leaders who never admit weakness. And I see Commander Lyra." He turned to her, his voice steady now. "She's brave. She is respected. But she also hides her heart. She fears that if she shows feeling, it will be seen as weakness. But I tell you this, where I come from, honesty of heart is strength. A warrior without truth inside will never truly win." For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The counselors whispered among themselves. Lyra's jaw tightened, but her eyes glowed with something new, something like pride in him. One of the oldest counselors leaned forward. "And what of you, human? You admit your kind speaks without thought. Is that not foolishness? Why should such recklessness be praised?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Yes, we speak without thinking sometimes. We make mistakes. I made one when I spoke about Commander Lyra's appearance without meaning to. But that mistake started this whole moment. It made us talk. It made us learn. My people may stumble, but we rise stronger because of it. Honesty gives us that chance." The arena grew restless again. The aliens were not used to hearing weakness spoken of so boldly. Yet some of them nodded slowly, as if understanding for the first time. The council finally rose. their robes sweeping the air like wings. The human has spoken. The experiment has proven that words without fear can open paths that strength alone cannot. Let it be known, humans shall have a voice among us, the crowd erupted. Some shouted in disagreement, others in awe. Lyra raised her hand and silence fell. She looked at Ethan, her eyes softer than he had ever seen. You stood before them with nothing but words. She said quietly, and you won. Do you know what that means? Ethan shook his head. I only spoke the truth. That's all. She stepped closer, her tall frame casting a shadow over him. No one has ever spoken about me so directly. No one has dared. You changed me. You made me question the way I live. You made me feel. Her voice trembled slightly on the last word, but she did not hide it. Ethan blinked in surprise. He had expected anger, or at least the usual coldness. Instead, her words carried something far greater. Lyra, I didn't mean to cause trouble. I couldn't lie. Not about what I thought. Not about what I see in you. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Perhaps your accident was not a mistake. Perhaps it was the first true gift a human has given us. The counselors left, but the arena crowd stayed, buzzing with excitement. For the first time in generations, a human voice had swayed alien judgment, and it had all begun with a thought spoken out loud. Later, when the chamber was quiet, Lyra and Ethan walked side by side through the long hallways of the starship. The silence between them was not heavy but gentle. At last Lyra spoke again. Do you remember what you said about me on the bridge? She asked. Ethan's face turned red. I try not to think about it. It was embarrassing. Her gaze turned forward, but he saw the edges of her lips turn up again. To us, words carry power. Most would be insulted. But I was not. I was surprised. And in that moment I realized something. You humans see us not only as warriors, but as beings with beauty and flaws. You see what we hide. That is a gift my people never give each other. Ethan scratched the back of his neck. I didn't mean for it to matter so much. It matters, she said firmly. Because of you, I no longer see honesty as weakness. I see it as rare strength. And perhaps, her voice softened again, perhaps your thoughts about me were not so foolish after all. Ethan stopped walking, stunned. He looked at her, trying to find the right words. But nothing came. His usual nervous chatter failed him. For once he was completely speechless. Lyra turned her head slightly, her eyes catching the glow of the starship lights. In my world, honesty is rarer than victory. You gave me that honesty. And for that, Ethan, you have my respect and more. The human engineer could hardly believe it. A commander feared by all, admitting that his clumsy truth had touched her heart. He had not planned this, not dreamed of it. Yet here it was, as real as the metal walls around them. In the end, it was not strength, not weapons, not technology that had built the bridge between them. It was a human mistake, an accidental truth spoken aloud. Something so small, yet it had changed everything. And as the ship sailed silently through the stars, Ethan realized that perhaps honesty was not only the greatest strength humans had, but also the one thing the universe needed most.